In 1970, popular support for the Queen was waning.
One lonely voice still shouting Labour.
On top of that, in a shock result, her new unlikely ally, Harold Wilson, was toppled in favour of the less malleable figure of Edward Heath.
The Queen has asked me to form the next government, and I am indeed proud to accept.
But her biggest worry was cash. The royal family was going into the red. A new cross-party committee had started poring over every penny the royals spent to see if they were giving Britain value for money. And committee members like Willie Hamilton were scrutinising every detail.
The gracious message of May the 19th, 1971 represented the most insensitive and brazen pay claim to be made in the last 200 years.
With Willie Hamilton on the committee, a burning light was shone into the darkest corners of royal expenditure. For the royals, it was an uncomfortable experience.
The staff at the palace were not used to discussing royal finances in public. They found it was regrettable, it was undesirable. Equally, they had sense enough to see that if they didn't cooperate, they weren't going to get money. And so their object obviously was to present the facts in as discreet and as favourable a light as possible.
When do we receive the party from Japan?
October, I believe, ma'am.
Well, we must ask the Emperor to bring a bottle.
Ma'am?
How many bottles of wine are consumed in the palace each quarter? Do they think I drink it all myself? These are state banquets. Would they prefer we offer the Emperor lemonade?
It is horribly intrusive, ma'am.
Every light bulb, every laundry bill is nothing to be left private. Will they choose which of their sovereign's duties they wish to support and which they do not?
But if the civil list is protected and increased...
If we have sheets dating back to Queen Victoria, blankets from William IV. Did they report their laundry bills to Parliament? Were their families suddenly hounded by accountants?
Indeed not, ma'am.
The Queen did receive a pay rise, but inflation would quickly take the shine off it, and she would never again be able to keep secret where the money really goes. Amongst others, Willie Hamilton would be watching and counting every penny spent, not just by the Queen, but by her children too.
One child grows up to be somebody that just loves to learn, and another child.
If we take two miners earning £20 a week each, they are making £2,000 a year between them. And they will have to work 50 years, both of them, before they will make, in a full working life, digging in the bowels of the earth, as much as we give to this young twerp in a year.
Blood's thicker than the mud, it's a family affair.
The truth is, she weren't too much bothered about her subjects then. Some of them were starving. She was more concerned about making sure that at Buckingham Palace and at Sandringham and Balmoral, everything would be hunky-dory.
Soon after, the miners, rejecting their pay deal, went on strike for the first time in 50 years. While the Queen was now earning £1 million a year, the miners were earning £25 a week.
If they don't slow down, there's a brick going through them windows.
Heath had promised to stand up to the unions. This was his test.
Let Ted Heath get down that shaft and let him have a go at it. If he's that good, let him have a weld.
The Queen's £500,000 pay rise started to feel symbolic of a worsening social divide. Britain was going to war with itself.
To be in Britain at a time at which the country was visibly cracking and threatening to break up into warring fragments must for the Queen have been deeply worrying and upsetting.
To save coal stocks, the government turned off the power for 9 hours a day. Britain was in blackout and a 3-day week.
The Queen made it quite clear that insofar as the country was suffering, that we working in Buckingham Palace would suffer too, and the power cuts, when they affected SW1, affected Buckingham Palace, and so the candles came out, and we did our work by candlelight.
Come.
The Prime Minister, Your Majesty.
Thank you. Prime Minister.
Ma'am. Oh!
I am so sorry, Prime Minister. Please, have a lamp.
Thank you, ma'am.
It rather reminds one of the war, don't you think? Except, of course, we're not at war.
We are not, ma'am.
So, what news from the front?
By now, nearly half the country was starting to feel that the royals weren't worth the money. And questions about the cost of royal engagements were breaking out into protests. The Queen had to face her angriest opponents in person.
Trouble began as a crowd of about 500 students took over a room in the MacRoberts Centre and shouted, jeered and swore as the Queen arrived.
The Queen was visiting the administration block and some students started banging on the windows, shouting, "Queen out." The scenes came during a 4-hour visit to the university. Groups of students, many drinking beer and wine, were almost everywhere the Queen went. Obscene songs were sung and a stink bomb was thrown as students protested at the amount of money spent on the visit.
At a time when the monarchy could have pulled Britain together, it was looking more irrelevant than ever.
Do you think you'll make a good housewife? I mean, can you cook, for example?
Yes, I'm not totally useless. I was quite well educated, one way and another.
But hope was at hand. The distraction of a royal romance. Princess Anne and her horse-riding companion Mark Phillips announced their engagement.
When you were a teenager, did you have any idea of the sort of girl that you would like to marry?
No, no, I didn't. I wasn't very clever with girls, I don't think, when I was a teenager.
Mark Phillips had a nickname which pervaded the press but also elements of the royal family. And the nickname was Fog, because he's thick and wet. And the view then was, she'll boss him around, because she'll boss around anybody she's married to. And he was not quick on his feet. He was quick on a horse, but that's different. And there were a lot of sort of slightly loose jokes about him, horses, and Princess Anne.
Can you speak to Charles? Can you tell him to stop being mean about Mark?
Mean?
Fog. He's not thick, you know. It's quite something he's taking on, this family.
I hope he feels welcome.
And Westminster Abbey? Given the choice, I'm sure we prefer a small, quiet church.
Anne, you know how important this is. For the family.
I sort of wish it wasn't.
I do know that, Anne. But this is a time when we all have to do our duty.
I do, you mean? Sorry. I didn't mean... I know.
Your wedding will bring people together. The country is very divided. It will restore faith. Duty first, self second.
Of course, Mummy.
I don't think the Queen would have tolerated the idea that her daughter should have a small, modest wedding in Crathy Church, because she knows, and always has done, that ritual and ceremony and kind of the entertainment value of the royal family is important to the monarchy. This had to be, you know, this is us. We do royal weddings and we do them big.
There's been so much excitement. I'm told people have spent a fortune on souvenirs. Plates, mugs, tea towels.
And lavatory roll.
What?
Anne and Mark toilet roll. It's in the papers.
The Lord Chamberlain never approved that.
I'm sure he didn't. But it's our faces, all right.
But people will be...
I'm afraid that's the point, Mummy.
A poll in the Sunday Mirror found that 87% of people didn't think that the taxpayers should pay for Princess Anne's honeymoon yacht. and that nearly 4 in every 10 wanted to get rid of the monarchy altogether.
They're lucky. They're very lucky. If my daughter got married, she couldn't have anything like that.
I think when she marries, her husband should be able to keep her.
Yes. But he's only a poor soldier.
Well, but my man's just a poor real man.
Will you be here for the royal wedding in 2 weeks' time?
Yes, we will. Yeah.
Looking forward to that?
Oh, very much so. She's a very beautiful woman. Yeah. She knows her own mind and she stands up for things, and that's very necessary.
I'm all for a republic myself.
Why? Any particular reason?
I'm against any hereditary sort of handing down of power and wealth.
As the wedding drew closer, Heath's standoff with the miners entered a new and dangerous phase. Britain started to slip into its worst economic recession since the 1930s.
It is as though the fabric of politics and society is coming apart. You have strikes, you have rampant inflation, you have rising unemployment, you have political extremism. There is a real palpable sense of gloom and of decay and of crisis.
We were running out of electricity, we were running out of coal. I mean, the whole thing in fuel was really disastrous.